Welcome to KGO Sports Talk. Can't believe that we're already to week 16 of the fantasy playoffs in the regular season. Once again, not as much as last time, but we've got quite a bit here, so we're going to jump right in. What I thought would be nice for a change, instead of just, spewing out information about this year, is to kind of recap where we've come from in this league. Because I'll tell you what, with me going through this and actually looking at the last few years, kind of shocking. Didn't even remember it. And it's kind of interesting running into some of these players again. But to start, we will. The furthest I could go back was 07, and I'll just touch on the winners. For 07, we had Stone Cold 316, who you're probably like, who the hell is that? That is Ozzy. And Ozzy, I thought this was kind of interesting too. Ozzy gets into the playoffs, with an 8-5 record, which for our league is pretty standard, but ends up winning the playoffs. And at that point, just to give you a frame of reference, 07, Joe DeVoe, or Skull Can King, as he was known, was in the league at that time as well. And then obviously bowed out after that. But a little recap of Ozzy's team. He had 2 kickers. So he felt the need to have 2 kickers on his team for some reason. And he had 2 team defenses, which is, okay, I've got 2 team defenses now, but usually don't have 2. But kind of interesting, Ozzy also had Torrey Holt and Clinton Portis were pretty dominant still back in 07. So that's pretty cool. I mean, you think about 07, guys like Torrey Holt. Like, I had Torrey Holt, I think, in 06, like the first year that we did the league, or I think it was 06. So kind of interesting there. And then also guys that are still putting up numbers, Marcus Colston and Tony Gonzo. Were Marcus Colston, obviously the beginning of it, his career, had a big year, over 200 points. This was kind of in that phase where he was like a W/R/T, where you could even use him as a tight end, I believe back in 06. I think that changed in 07. Now moving on to 08, the champion was Speed Goats. So Gordy pulled it out. Gordy had a solid 9-4 record. He had the Denver connection. So he had Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall were both on Denver and just destroying people. Just like they have this year. Even though the teams, really, the Bears are struggling. Marshall's been huge this year. He was huge back in 08. Cutler, just to give you an idea of how good Jay Cutler actually was, Jay Cutler went for over 400 fantasy points in 2008. That's insane. That's phenomenal. And really just shows on top, he's kind of a hothead, but he's actually got some serious talent. Gordy had Jones Drew and Matt Forte as his running backs. Both guys, obviously, at the top of their career at that point. Forte was young, coming out of Tulane, but still physically at his peak. Injuries have hurt him since then. And Gordy also had the Jackson bros, so to speak. Deshaun Jackson, also young at the time for Philly, breakout year. Vincent Jackson for San Diego, same thing, breakout year. Big numbers for both of those guys. In 09, we had Jesus and the Winwood, Billy, at 10-3. So this was obviously the year that I remember. I do remember this year, where Billy was just smoking people. And Pat, sorry to say that the same connection didn't work for you this year, because Billy had Aaron Rodgers and Jamal Charles that were just blowing up. A-Rod went for almost 450 fantasy points in 09. He also had who I would consider, I know it's not Javon Curse, but I will call Adrian Peterson the freak because he's also known as All Day. Adrian Peterson went for 308 points and also had 43 receptions. So Jamal Charles, splitting time with Colby Smith, still broke 1,000 yards rushing. One of the most consistent teams, I'll say, from top to bottom of all time was Billy's team in 2009. Extremely dominant, 10-3. In 2010, Pat Reelman, real deal, somehow won the league with a 7-6 record. A 7-6 record regular season. So obviously picked it up, got steam in the playoffs, won the league with 3 QBs on his team. And get this, Sam Bradford was his starting QB. Sam Bradford, the same guy that's struggling to put up numbers now. He also had John Kitna, which is kind of interesting. His big thing has always been, Pat's always loved to get strong running backs. He had DMC and Adrian Peterson. Peterson blew up, no doubt. And Darren McFadden, believe it or not, the guy's been just injured every fucking year, but McFadden actually had big numbers, put up 260 fantasy points that year, with also 47 receptions. So it just shows, if this guy were to stay healthy, you'd want him every year. Speedster, can blow by people, but just can't stay on the field. Pat also had, as far as a wide receiver, because Pat'll obviously need to sprinkle in somebody at wide receiver. He had Larry Fitzgerald, who actually at that point did have a quarterback that was able to get him the ball, and actually have the ball touch his hands. This year, I know that's been tough. 2011, our buddy, fuck you, Yedge, Chuck, another guy, and I think this just kind of shows the really how good all the teams are, because Chuck, in addition to Pat winning at 7-6 regular season, so did Chuck. Chuck won last year with a 7-6 regular season record, so barely got into the playoffs. His big guys, boy, what a difference a year makes, because Phillip Rivers has been brutal this year. Not even playable, really. Borderline top 20 quarterback in the league. Phillip Rivers last year was his highest points getter on Chuck's team, you would hope, at 364 fantasy points. So pretty solid year for Rivers. Also, MJD went for almost 300 fantasy points, and Jason Witten, solid as he is every year, as good as any wide receiver, 79 receptions for Chuck last year, Jason Witten. And if I'm remembering correctly, Chuck took Baltimore's D in the 5th round in our live draft in Delaware. So let's do another live draft again, because I want to see people make mistakes in the 5th round that actually end up winning them, help to win them championships. So nice move on that, Chuck. I know people were yelling at you. I was screaming like, make it back, and you made a pretty good call, I guess. Obviously, you won the league. So for this year, finally, 2012, Jay Reed, rookie. I cannot say this enough. Hell of a year, bro. 10-3 overall record, so very similar to Jesus and the Windwood, who won the league in 2009 at 10-3. Jay, first seed playoffs, first draft pick in the draft this year. It took Peyton Manning in the 2nd round. That was a joke, and look who's laughing now. And the whole year, one thing I did need to make a note of, the whole year, Jay has really not had even a second running back. He's got Arian Foster. Arian Foster's put up big numbers, as he should. Jay's floated in Michael Bush, who's been, okay, he's a backup in Chicago. So Jay's been able to squeak by with not really having much of a second running back. Now, the difference maker here for Jay is the fact that he has Randall Cobb. And I believe Jay picked up Randall Cobb, or may have drafted him. That's something I probably should have checked out before this. But Randall Cobb, I'll say the Victor Cruz of 2012. Randall Cobb's been huge. Greg Jennings, injury prone, complete bust. I don't know if anyone should ever want Greg Jennings again. Same thing, can't stay healthy. So Randall Cobb, difference maker for Jay all year long. Biggest bust on Jay's team, Antonio Gates. Who the hell would have thought Antonio Gates and San Diego's whole offense would be brutal with all the talent that they have? But Antonio Gates, awful this year. Didn't do anything. Now, to my team, I will go out on a limb and just say, and I don't even think I'm going out on a limb, but I'll just say it. I have the best wide receiving core in our fantasy league. I have Des Bryant, Brandon Marshall, right there. That duo, I don't think anybody has anything better than that. I've had to sit Cecil Shorts multiple weeks, and Cecil Shorts, as we all know, or should know, is a top 10 to 15 as far as fantasy points, wide receiving scorer in the league. Nobody, who the hell is Cecil Shorts? But another young guy, going to be huge in Jacksonville for years to come. And then rounding that out, Michael Crabtree has been huge for me as well. Somebody dropped Crabtree at one point. Probably they had to. And I was able to pick him up. Another big difference maker with the trades that we touched on with the last blog, Chris Johnson actually showed up this year. That was huge. Chris Johnson started off awful, sucked for the first 3 weeks. Not in a contract year, but in a year where at the end of this year, if he's still on Tennessee on the squad, he gets a guaranteed like $10 million or something like that. So no wonder Chris Johnson all of a sudden stopped partying and started producing and putting up big numbers. Broke 1,000 yards this year. Also, another thing, just you talk to people at work and shit like that are in fantasy leagues. A lot of people talk about, RG3. Cam Newton's not the same anymore. Cam Newton's not the same. I just want to say this. Cam Newton made the Pro Bowl last year. Huge year, obviously. Cam Newton's on pace to pass last year's numbers. So, that's one thing, Everybody likes to freak out about stuff, but it's like, look, let's give some people some time to turn shit around and see where it goes. And as you can see, Cam's doing just fine. My prediction, finally, for this, obviously, is that I win against Jay this year. I don't think I can allow myself to say otherwise. My team's been putting up big numbers for the last 4 to 6 weeks. The one thing that I love about this is the fact that this week, the last football game is on Sunday night. So when all of us are together hanging out, hopefully everybody's still at the Lake House Pub or Chuck's or whatever. We will know Sunday night who won our fantasy league this year. So that'll be cool. That'll be pretty exciting. And looking forward to seeing all the guys, whoever can be back. Obviously, Adams, Ozzy, and Eddie are not going to be present. And I believe Capron is going to be local, but is not going to be able to break away from family for a few hours to be a part. So just kidding, dude. Total score that I'm going to say it's going to be a close one. I'm going to say total score on this one, 131 to 125. KGO Sports Talk takes it down. My team pulls it out. Ace Ventura for league champion. Other cool thing that I know is from looking through everything, I have yet to see a repeat champion. Now, Reelman, correct me if I'm wrong, have you won the league twice. The first year I think you may have won it, which would make you the first two-time champion for the league, but that's yet to be confirmed. So anyway, guys, thanks for sticking it out. This video actually being longer than I thought it was going to be. Sorry about that. Our music even cut out. My phone died, so we're done with the music. But I will see everybody Sunday. Thanks for listening, and let's party.